What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Sun Belt Syndicate, bringing back the round ball roundup until Zach comes up with a better name. My name is Dominick Crosetto. We've been doing this a couple years now, mostly me by myself with the basketball, but Zach knows his stuff. We've been interacting back and forth on Twitter a little bit. I myself am not really a basketball expert on the X's and O's aspect. I've been watching a lot of Sun Belt over the past 2 seasons and learned a lot. And there's still a lot to learn about this upcoming season. It did contribute to the ECB digital magazine. So if you're interested in previewing all Division I teams, go check that out. We'll put a link in the description below. But that's kind of my background on the basketball thing, still learning, still processing everything that we are going to learn along the way in this Sun Belt season. And we're going to have Zach tell you a little bit more about himself before we get rolling along here with our Sun Belt preview.
Yeah, so I'm Zach. I'm originally from the state of Indiana, which is obviously a basketball-rich state. So when I came down to Coastal for college, I started watching more Sun Belt basketball, obviously. And I kind of noticed there wasn't really much coverage or really much attention to Sun Belt basketball. So I kind of wanted to help bring that attention and bring that to light, because I think this is a really good league and a really underrated and undervalued league. So, I grew up around basketball a lot. I came down to Coastal, and basketball. There wasn't much basketball attention, so I'm trying to bring that to the Sun Belt.
Absolutely, you're doing a great job of it. That's where I found you on Twitter first, sharing all these guys. I'm like, who is this guy? How does he keep up with all this? Like, I'm trying to be in the know and follow along with all these accounts and keep up with this. And Zach's over here tweeting stuff before some of the bigger outlets are. So, and did you play basketball yourself?
I played until my 8th grade year, and then I went into high school and I went to a high school with like a bunch of Division I athletes playing basketball, and I'm like 5'10", and going into high school I was even shorter, and the point guard there's 6'2", 6'3", and he's starting point guard at West Virginia. So it's like we're in the same conference as like Braden Smith, who's Big Ten Player of the Year. So it's like, okay. I'm not on that talent level. So I kind of played other sports, ran cross country, track, played a little bit of soccer in high school, but yeah, kind of strayed away from basketball once I got to high school.
Nice. Okay. Well, Sun Belt also a hell of a conference when it comes to soccer, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We got some really good teams up there in that West Virginia area, Virginia area too. And obviously Coastal's had some pretty good teams. We've got, the Georgia teams that have done pretty well every once in a while, and some SEC teams that have found a home in the Sun Belt of all places. So pretty interesting. As we go along here, what we'll do is we're going to bring in the graphic to show you kind of how last season ended up. We are going to give you kind of a little bit of thoughts and overview about what we see coming into this year, but also wrapping up last year. So you guys have an idea of where these teams left off and what they experienced last year before we get going too heavily into this season. So we are going to go from the bottom to the top, and that starts us off with the ODU Monarchs, a conference mark of just 3-15, an overall record of 7-25. Maybe decent at home. I don't know. It's hard to say 5-10 is decent, Zach, right? Certainly not good away from the friendly confines of their home arena at just 1-12 overall. Got to improve those marks. A lot of struggles last season. They had their head coach had the health issue. I think that really started when they were on that. Was it the Caribbean or was it a Hawaii tournament they were at? I think it was.
Yeah, I think Hawaii? It was somewhere in the Caribbean.
Caribbean. Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somewhere nice.
Remember. Yeah, exactly. It was definitely a nice destination, regardless of where it was at. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he's probably done mostly due to that. But obviously, this wasn't a great season for him either. They bring in head coach Mike Jones, which is a great basketball name for those rap fans out there who remember that. Zach, are you too young to know Mike Jones, the rapper, or are you familiar with who that is?
Yeah, I've heard him, but I don't think I've heard much of his music. So
okay, he's got one song where Yeah, he just repeats his name in the song a whole lot. I'm pretty sure he gives out his phone number, which apparently at the time was his real phone number too. Kind of ridiculous. But anyway, the head coach is a different Mike Jones, who comes in with some good experience, and some people got some real excitement up there in Norfolk. I mean, they have to be better this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. At least 7-25. I mean,
Yeah, I mean they have a center transfer. Are you familiar with this kid at all? Caleb Swanton Roger, 7 foot, 227-pound transfer from the Maryland Terrapins.
yeah, he didn't play much at Maryland, but he's following Mike Jones, who was an assistant at Maryland, following him to ODU. And from what I've seen or what I've heard from like secret scrimmages and exhibitions and stuff like that, he's been a big part in their post game. So I think he should be a piece that really contributes for them right away.
Yeah. I mean, 7-foot centers are not plentiful in this conference, as we all know. You know, those are pretty rare for Sun Belt teams to grab and keep hold of, especially. So to have a transfer from a power team like Maryland, again, like you said, following head coach Mike Jones, that's got to bode well. Definitely going to be an expected starter at that point. Is there anybody else that's sticking out to you on the roster that could help flip this thing around with the new head coaching staff they've got there?
Sean Duru-Gordon, he's a transfer from Siena. He's played on like 3 different teams, but I mean, last year he averaged, I think, nearly 20 points a game. I think that's a guy that is probably going to be their leading scorer, and is going to be, I think, I don't know how his system plays, but he should be one of the leading scorers in the country or in the conference. So I think that's a guy, and I think just some of the guys that are returning as well from ODU last year, like Danny Pounds, Devin Caesar, Emo Essien, like these guys, RJ Blakeney, like these guys are going to be, I think, key pieces in the rotation, and they're also have like some sense of familiarity with ODU basketball as a whole. So I think those are some guys to watch out for as well.
Yeah, I don't have any different names to give out than those right there, because I think you're right. I mean, guys playing opposite Blakeney are going to be very important because, like you said, he's coming back, and he can provide some leadership and some. Well, it's kind of weird when you say that, because there's a new head coach, so it's like he can kind of teach them how they do things, but that's probably not really the case with a new head coach. Everybody's played sports, kind of gone through that, and even if you're a veteran on the team, some of those aspects do change. But
yeah, I mean, like just him being at ODU, knowing the expectations and what the campus and the fan base and the students expect out of you and stuff like that should be helpful for a first-year head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I do have them being a little bit better. I don't know if you've carved out an exact spot you'd put them at. I don't have them coming out of the basement a lot, but I could be totally wrong. I'll tell you what, I've done basketball kind of predictions the past 2 years before the season has started, and they're nowhere where I thought they'd be. Sans like 3 or 4 teams maybe, but the rest of the conference is just you might as well just shake a dice and go with what you roll, because I don't know where to put these guys. It's just too many unknowns, but I do have them still towards the bottom 4.
I had them 11th. So,
okay.
I mean, not like completely last, but making some type of strides. We'll get into this later, but I think there's 4 teams at the top, and then 5 through 14 is kind of just every man for himself. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Totally agree. It's funny that you said you have them at 11th. I thought about putting them in there. I have them at 12, so I will give that away there. So we are pretty close in that. I think there's just a lot to overcome for a first-year head coach, with a whole roster to learn and also a conference to learn. So it's not like he's got the familiarity with exactly how a lot of these other coaches run their game just yet. Obviously, as the season goes on, he'll become a better aware of that. But expect better things for ODU for sure. Okay, I'm probably going to let you do the intro for this one, since this is your team here. This is where you're currently going to school. What year are you at Coastal, by the way?
I'm a senior.
Senior, okay.
Yep.
And you are done after this year, senior-wise, or you have a couple classes to finish up?
It's going to be close. I mean,
Okay.
I think my advisor kind of messed up on a few things, so it's going to be close. If I can get as many classes as I can in this next semester, I might be able to get done. But if not, I'll have to take like one or two more classes the following semester. So
Nice. Okay, that's not bad. Were you kind of caught up in that COVID aspect, or was that not a big play for you? I can't remember.
That was my high school. That was in high
Okay.
school. Yeah, that was my junior and senior year of high school. So
Gotcha. Yeah, but being out of school at this point, I am unfamiliar with like exactly who's left that was affected by that. I mean, you got guys playing 6-7 years of football in college, and probably basketball too in some cases. But anyway, back to the task at hand here. Coastal Carolina coming in. They've also got a new head coach to talk about. So Zach, take it away. What your thoughts are, and obviously you could see how they did last season here on the graphic.
Yeah. So last year, Cliff Ellis was obviously the head coach there for a very long time. He was planning to retire at the end of the year, but it wasn't going so well. And he wanted the rest of his staff to get a chance to maybe stake their claim on that job. So Benny Moss took over. Didn't end up too well, obviously. They fired him, and they bring in Justin Gray from West Carolina, who is very young. He's considered one of the up-and-comers in the coaching scene. And I think it was a great hire by Coastal getting him before maybe staying a few more years and then a Power 5 or someone with more money going out and grabbing him. So I think they did a good job of getting him quick. But, yeah, I mean, they bring back two guys, Braden McVicker and Henry Abraham. So, it's going to be really, really different. And, yeah, I mean, Coastal – Justin Gray prides himself on defense. So, I mean, if you watch any Coast basketball last year, the defense was horrendous. They could score, but the defense was horrendous. So I think that will be a big shift for the Chants this year. And I'm also interested to see, only two guys followed him from Western Carolina, which I thought was interesting because a lot more guys entered the portal from Western Carolina. And the fact that technically only one. Rasheed Jones was there as a freshman, and then he redshirted, transferred to a JUCO, and then as soon as he committed to the JUCO, he recommitted to Western Carolina. So it's kind of like you see it in soccer, they loaned him out for a year so he could play, and obviously now he comes here. So only two guys know in the system. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all these pieces fit.
Yeah, definitely very interesting. Thoughts on, or how much do you know there about Colin Granger, who's a 6'9", 235-pound center that does come over for Western Carolina? I would assume that he's thought of as a very potential starter. Is that something you would think too?
Yeah, I don't think he's a starter just because, one, he's older, and two, he knows the system. And, I mean, the other two centers, Mabor Mayock and Noah Amenhauser, at least to their previous years, they haven't really done much to show me this is going to be a starter. So yeah, I would probably expect Colin Granger to be a starter right away, at least for the first part of the year. And then maybe a Noah Amenhauser, who's a sophomore, kind of takes over the reins towards the end of the year or something.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Is there, I guess, at this point, did you get to see any of these secret scrimmages? I mean, I know that they are called secret scrimmages for a reason, but I don't know how much you can maybe sneak in potentially, or if there's even been any at Coastal's home facility at this point.
No.
Okay.
I have a couple of people who know things around Coast basketball. I think they've only had one, and that was against Queens, and they tied. But I tried getting some people to kind of talk a little bit about what happened, and they're pretty tight-lipped over there. So, yeah, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I guess they do pretty well. I mean, I tried to find, after you started telling me some of the background stuff on a couple teams, secret scrimmage-wise, I'm like, I'm going to Google some of this. There's got to be other people tweeting stuff out. It is silent. It's shocking that in today's day and age with technology and the fact that people love to gobble up information like that it's not leaking out more. So, again, Zach,
I guess you just got to know the right people, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You have some type of tie-in that is getting you access to information that is not easily found otherwise. So, yeah, I mean, is there a little bit of excitement? I know High Point was a really good team last year, the team that knocked out Arkansas State in, was that the NIT? Is that one the NIT, right? Whatever postseason
I think it's
tournament they were
CBI,
in.
maybe.
Maybe yeah, I think you're right. It was the CBI because I was surprised Arkansas State made it in over, not over, but Troy was also up there with the amount of wins they had, but their season obviously didn't end as quite the high point that Arkansas State did. But anyway, Denzel Hines transferred in there from High Point, and then Nas Brown from Oklahoma State. That's got to lead to some continuation of the good offensive play that you were talking about just a minute ago.
Yeah, I also think Jordan Battle. He's a JUCO transfer from Salt Lake Community College. His head coach at Salt Lake Community College is now an assistant coach at Coastal.
Okay.
So the coach technically followed him over here, but I mean, he was a top 10 rated JUCO recruit. He averaged, I think it was like 13 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists or something like that. And he shot like almost 50% from 3 and over 50% from the field.
Wow.
I think that's going to be the starting point guard. And from what I've seen, like pictures and stuff, he seems like a real leader. So I think that's a guy that is intriguing to me. And then I also think a guy like D.A. Houston, he's a transfer from Longwood who was in the tournament last year, and he started and played significant minutes for them. So I think those are 2 guys in the backcourt that I think are intriguing, and I think will get a lot of time.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. See, this is the good insight that not many other, if anybody, even really has, maybe besides people on the team themselves. So it can't, again, just kind of like ODU, it can't be as bad again this year, right? I mean, there's got to be a pretty good improvement here for Coastal.
I mean, I don't know if they'll improve much record-wise, but I think they'll be more competitive, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't. Just looking at the rosters on paper, I don't think it matches up well compared to most of the teams in this conference. And I also like to say they had a guy named Marcus Watson, transfer from Towson. He's a former 4-star recruit, went to Oklahoma State, then went to NCAA, where he averaged like 15 a game, and then went to Towson. He tore his ACL and never played. But he transferred to Coastal, and I thought he was going to be like the guy for Coastal this year. Justin Gray tends to have these like 6'5", 6'6", 220-pound guards who can pretty much do it all. Like his first 2 years were Nick Robinson at Western Carolina. The last 2 years were Vontarius Woolbright, who was honorable mention All-American. So I thought Marcus Watson was going to fill that role. And he has reportedly, I haven't got confirmation or anything, but he's been dismissed from the team, allegedly. And I have no idea why. He's not on the roster anymore. So I think that's really interesting to me because I thought he was going to be a big part of their success. And with him no longer there, I don't know who's going to be the guy this year to help him out offensively, especially.
Good point. Yeah, I did see that come through. Trevor Everett, who runs the 2 Pointers podcast for those college and NBA fans, as he covers both there, did throw that tweet out to me when that happened, and I double checked my write up, and I was like, okay, good, I didn't have him in the starting 5, which for what you're saying was probably a bad decision. But now that he's no longer there, I guess I got lucky in the fact that I don't look foolish. But we'll see about that aspect. Yeah, it's interesting that you said you don't necessarily see the record improving, even though I said it couldn't be as bad. I just realized that I only had them at 13th, which is the exact same spot that they finished last season. So, yeah, I guess when I'm going back through my notes, I also feel very similar to how you do, because I do think they will be better as far as competitive-wise and closer games and probably just looking better with the eye test. So things looking up for Coastal Carolina basketball. And, maybe they could surprise all of us. All right. So the next team up here is the Warhawks of ULM, just 6-12 in conference, 11-19 overall. They had an 8-6 home mark, so they did have a winning record there, but just 3-12 away, and that's certainly not going to do you any favors at all. As far as the Warhawks go, no head coaching change. In fact, their head coach has been around. I want to say is he the longest tenured head coach in Sunbelt, I believe, with 15 years for Keith Richard.
I would assume, yeah, I would assume so. But we can talk about this here in a little bit. But I don't know if he'll be around much longer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get into that right now?
Okay. Well, I mean, I've heard that this is going to be his last year, similar to how Cliff was last year. Like before the
Okay.
season, like this is most likely going to be his last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get off to a slow start or if they start to struggle. I wouldn't be surprised if he does what Cliff Ellis did last year and kind of retires mid-season when they're struggling and hopefully lets one of his friends try to keep the job. So, I mean, he's getting up there. He's getting up there in age as well. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of just the nature of the game.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, but the longest tenured coach in the Sun Belt as of now. I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know if anybody's even close to him. Scott Cross.
I would assume like Bob Marlin is probably up there or closer.
Oh yeah, that's true. Let me scroll up here and see if I can find Marlin. Oh, 15th. So they're the same amount of years there. So yeah, but tied for the lead because there's definitely not a whole lot of other guys in this conference that have been around for 15 years with one institution. So little interesting again. Final Ken Palm was 298, by the way. So yikes, not great in that regard. I don't know. I think this roster is a little interesting going into the year. They've got a couple of out of the country players. Rainers Sondors, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this kid won the gold medal for the U18 Latvian basketball team in the Olympics. Not the Olympics, European Championships in 2023. And I don't know. I feel like the Latvians can just shoot the ball really, really well. And this kid is, 6'9", 228, and he's probably shoots the three just as good as anybody else in the conference. I don't know if there's anybody else on the roster that sticks out to you immediately. I think, is Tyrese Watson a holdover from last season?
Yes, he is, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he is.
Okay. 6'4" senior, 190. Yeah. And then I had the other forward, A.D. Diadho?
Diju, no idea is how it's pronounced.
Okay. We'll go with you. That's the first time I probably said that out loud. So, yeah, but what is he? He's from Senegal, is that correct?
Yeah. Transfer from UAB.
Do you know anything about his time at UAB?
Yeah, I don't think he didn't contribute much at UAB.
Okay.
I mean, he played 17 minutes a game last year for them, so should be like a rotational big man.
Gotcha. Anybody else? Looks like Tyzier Smith from Pearl River Community College comes in as a JUCO transfer, and I'm seeing PD McCraney from Hinds Community College. Are you familiar with that one?
I think he was there last year, but I don't know if he played much. But Tyzier Smith averaged almost 20 points a game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists at his JUCO last year. So I think that's an exciting piece. And that's Colty Young, transfer from Jackson State. I think this is his last year of eligibility, but just an experienced guy who's been there.
Nice. Yeah, I did have him listed as a potential contributor, but I didn't have him as a possible starter, I don't think. But again, Zach probably knows more than I do, so go with his word over mine for sure. I guess that probably rounds it out for the Warhawks, just because we're not quite as sure how that's it's just a really interesting mix of a roster. It's how so many guys from different areas of the country, or not only the country, but the world literally, are going to come together and work well as a team. It may happen, it may not, but that's probably way too early to tell. As far as their jump up or move down, what are you thinking about where this team could end up this year?
I picked them to finish last in the conference. I think
you?
Yeah, they're just kind of like Coastal. There's no one that really like jumps out of the page to me, and also they return a lot of guys from a team that did not do well last year. Like almost their whole roster are returners, which can be a good thing, but I don't know if that's a good thing for a losing team. Versus these guys that finish under them, like Coastal and Old Dominion, turn around their entire roster. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Yeah, I actually have them having a big jump up, finishing around the middle of the pack. Again, this is one of those ones that I'm not necessarily real confident in, but there's something in this roster to me that, like you said, they return a lot of guys. They've got some guys that are literally international that have some talent. Could they really just round into a form? I mean, I like the home record of 8-6. I didn't love it. Splitting almost 500, a little bit better than that. The away record has to improve. There's no doubt about it. But they had some performances against some of the better teams. Again, didn't end up in wins, but had some performances that I thought, were still strong. And if they could get those to move over a little bit, again, veteran team, maybe it sways their way a little bit more this year, which, again, we've seen how close a lot of these teams are. You talked about it before we really got rolling here about that 5-12, 5-14 aspect of, throwing something out and just seeing if it sticks. This is one of those teams I'm taking a flyer on, just throwing it out, the possibility maybe that they take a big jump this year, but we will have to see how that rolls. This one's kind of the same. Texas State, 7-11. So I love that 7-11. And just 17-18 overall, 9-4 at home. So decent home mark, but just 5-11 away from San Marcos. What do you think the Bobcats may have in store for us this year?
I have them finishing like middle of the pack in the Sun Belt, like 8-9 range, 7-8-9 range.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I like their coach. I like some of their pieces they got. They returned several guys. Tyrell Morgan, I think, is going to be a massive piece for them. I think he only played 2 games last year, but was averaging like 15 a game in those 2. Caden Gomes, who arguably could have been up there with the freshman of the year last year. I think he's poised to have a big year. This Tylen Pope guy who transfers in from Nevada, he's 6'6", 240. But I heard he's like probably the most athletic guy in the conference. Like, I heard this guy absolutely flies. And then I also like Mark Drome. I didn't really know much about him. Averaged 20 a game in JUCO. Comes from Southwest Mississippi Community College. I mean, he's a short, low point guard, but from what I heard on the Sunbelt Media Day that the coaching staff is really high on what he can do and the different options that he can provide this team as well.
Nice. Very nice. Colton Benson, too, returns. I think he was a pretty big contributor last year at the guard position, a 6'1", 170 junior. So not a huge guy. Not many guys that I'm bigger than on the basketball court, but that would actually be one of them. I'm barely bigger than him, but
I really like their guards. I think they're deep in their guard position. The question is just going to be the bigs. I mean, they return Christian Turner from last year, but other than that, it's a bunch of transfers. So, and a lot of them are from community colleges or JUCO. So, we'll see how they take the step to the Sun Belt.
Yeah, Drew Drennan, another one of those guards you were talking about, I think, is coming back. But yeah, this team. This is a team I flirted with putting kind of where you did at the middle of the pack. I didn't. I think I only had them jumping up a little bit, if at all, as far as record wise is concerned. Let's see where
I have them at 9th.
I put them at 11.
I have
them at 9th. Okay, I had two spots lower for them, but yeah, I could be wrong. Again, I know I will be wrong. How about that? About some of these teams, it's just too much to know. But that's the fun of what we're doing here now. But yeah, their final KenPom, just to note, was 180. So that shows you the disparity between two teams that were relatively close in the conference standings, but how different they can be in that KenPom rating when it comes down to it. All right. The Marshall Thundering Herd, unfortunately for them, at least in my mind, one of the bigger disappointments coming out of last season. I know that they typically pride themselves on their basketball. Their women's side was really good last year. Their men's side did fall off some of that was a little bit expected with the transfers that left and the talent that left. They went just 7-11 again in conference play, 13-20 overall, 8-7 at home, but just 3-9 away. It seems like that's a common theme here for the teams that struggled was playing away from home. What do you think about the Marshall Thundering Herd going into this season with new head coach Cornelius Jackson?
I think they'll be an interesting team to watch. I think, obviously, Mike D'Antoni leaving is going to be a loss. But, Corny Jackson, from what I've heard, the fan base is really behind him. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of tactics and what kind of things he draws up. They added a few guys that are interesting. They kept Nate Martin and Obeda and Achille Killen. So Those are big pieces. Also keeping Nutter, who didn't have a good year last year, but he was a freshman. So the only thing you can assume is he's going to get better. And then bring back White Fricks as well. And then, like I said, they added several pieces that I think are solid pieces.
Is one of those pieces Kai Spears from Alabama, a team that went on a deep run? Alabama was a Final Four team last year, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But he's a walk-on because I guess his dad is the AD or his grandpa's the AD. He's got a connection to the AD. So he's technically on scholarship, but he's not on a basketball scholarship. So
interesting.
I didn't really point him out. I think like Michael Dawson is from Huntington.
Yeah.
Played at Akron. That's a team that won a lot of games when he was there. He's coming back home. Good 3-point shooter, good defender. I think Dzang Mingo, transfer from a Canadian college, averaged over 20 a game there. And he had a good exhibition game yesterday, I think it was. And then Jalen Spear, who averaged almost 20 at Florida A&M. He's a point guard. Kind of take over, I think, that Andy Taylor role from a few years ago. But
yes,
is that like leading scoring guard? So there. And then I've heard a lot of good things about the Gibbs twins. Their transfer from NAIA. They didn't put up the greatest numbers at NAIA school, but from what I've heard, they've really impressed in the offseason. And I think one of them had like 19 yesterday in their exhibition. So there's a bunch of interesting pieces on this team.
Yeah, I was leaning statistically coming in before you just said that. I was leaning toward Cade Gibbs as kind of being the one that stood out to me just slightly more. I don't know if that's the one that you.
I think that's the one that had 19 yesterday. I believe.
Yeah, he had some pretty good statistics that stood out. Not a small set of guys. He's 6'6", 222 from what I've got here. Do you know anything about Grace College? Being from Indiana, is that like a known kind of like NAIA basketball school at all? Or not sure.
I've heard the name Grace College, but I haven't heard like any like good athletic things with it. Like obviously, like I've heard some like people from my school or schools around us go there, but I haven't heard it's like this like NAIA powerhouse. It might be, but I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure either, but I thought it was interesting that they had the twins coming over from there. And I took a chance and said I thought Cade could be a potential starter for them, again, with leaning statistically on what he did at Grace. And like you said, maybe that looks like a good pick after a pretty good game yesterday, we were saying, we believe. As far as their final KenPom, though, listen to this, 238. So you just heard Texas State at like 150 there or 180, what I said. And then this one way, way down for Marshall. But the potential there to jump up quite a bit, I think, the bigs are the aspect that we're going to lean on being pretty good for Marshall this year. Do you have them making a little bit of a jump up in this year?
I have them 10th. So right around where they finished last year. But, like you said, like I said earlier, like 5, 6 through 14. I think is just anyone's game. And I think this is the team that could shock some people with, especially their scoring ability with like the Gibbs twins or Mingo or Spear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could see, a packed house is going to make a big difference, and I feel like Marshall's going to be able to do that this year. A lot of excitement going on. I know you've seen it, Zach, but if you haven't seen some of the stuff that they've put together for their what is it called? Some schools call it Midnight Madness or whatever. The pump up event to get everybody.
Mm-hmm. I forget what they call it.
The Marshall one is top notch. If you haven't seen what they've done,
I mean, they bring people everywhere for any game.
Yeah.
Like the Coastal, I go to the Coastal versus Marshall basketball game, and I would say that game is always sold out. And if you know Coastal basketball, no one shows up to those games. That game is sold out every year, and it's like 65-70% Marshall fans. And then same with football, like that whole away sideline is just filled with green. And then I think baseball, they were the same way. Like they everywhere they go, they have support.
Yeah, and you're not kidding, because as you are a soccer guy, I went over, I think it was last season. They played a first round matchup for soccer against Elon. And I went over there, and I had my son with me, and I was like, hey, let's run to the bathroom before halftime so we beat all the lines, because it's a small stadium. Mm-hmm. We went out there and somebody scored, and the place went absolutely nuts. So I'm thinking, walking back, obviously Elon scored. It was so loud. We heard it in the bathroom, which is not even attached to the stadium. You had to cross the street and go to this other facility. No, that's how many people Marshall brought to the game. They sounded like the home crowd. They probably had more people than Elon at that thing.
Everywhere for every sport. They always have major support.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it, which is a good thing. We want as many teams like that in the Sun Belt that we can get. So, absolutely. Just to touch on where I think I had Marshall is probably about 8th is where I had them. So a little bit of a jump up, but nothing too crazy. But like you said, I think this is a team that could surprise us all. I don't know if you've got Georgia Southern being a surprise team, a team that went just 8-10 in conference, 9-24 overall, 6-7, a losing mark at home, and just 2-14 away. But they do have a brand new stadium that they're going to be playing in this year. So do you think that bodes well for the Eagles of Georgia Southern?
Yeah, I'm really high on Georgia Southern this year. I'm finishing 5th in the conference. I think they're a team that, a sleeper team that could make a run in the tournament and really shock some people. Like, they bring back several key contributors: Aaron Banks, Eugene Brown, Avante Parker, and then I like some of the guys they brought in. Adante Holloman had a really good. I think they went to the Dominican Republic over the summer, and he was really good. Dante Horn transferred from Texas State. He was good last year for Texas State, and I think he was good in the Caribbean too. Micah Smith was a high-rated freshman recruit. Was recruited to James Madison, and then when Byington left, decommitted, came over. Nakavian White is a JUCO Division II National Player of the Year or something like that, and he's I think a piece that's going to contribute big. Like, I really like this team a lot.
Yeah, it looked like South Carolina's 2A Player of the Year in Braylon Thomas, 3-time 3A Player of the Year from the state of Georgia, Micah Smith, and then Langston Boyd had a great year. No superlatives like that, but North Carolina's Mallard Creek High School, which is in the Charlotte area, which is not easy to put up numbers like 19.9 points per game average. I absolutely agree with you. What's funny is we didn't compare anything, right? Before we did this, we didn't compare anything. I also have Georgia Southern in 5th place in the Sun Belt this season. So I do absolutely agree with you. I got Dante Horn as a very much a potential starter. Tyson Brown, a 6'9", 225 transfer from Rhode Island, Rhode Island's typically a pretty decent basketball institution. So, yeah, if you remember, and as an App State guy, obviously I remember this, they took App State to the wire there at home and lost in overtime. Certainly should have, could have, would have won it at the end of regulation without even needing overtime with a slightly different play. I think if I remember correctly, it was something like a foul they let up that they probably just didn't even need to give up. So this team was competing with some of the better teams in the conference last year, even though the record doesn't necessarily indicate it. But I do think that, like you said, Zach, the potential is there for a big turnaround. There's got to be some of that is excitement with the new arena.
Well, they also started like 0-11, 0-12 last year, and that I think that was a symptom of having a first year head coach, Charlie Henry, who's very young for head coaching standards, his first head coaching job, and he even admitted like there was a lot of stuff I had to figure out and a lot of stuff that I did not expect when becoming a head coach. And I think we saw towards the end of the year and in the Sun Belt tournament like what they're capable of. And I think Charlie Henry is a great coach, and I think he'll be a name to watch out in a few years for like these like high major openings. And yeah, like I said, I think what we saw towards the end of last year and into the Sun Belt tournament is we're going to see more of that this year. And I also think they're 13 deep. I think all 13 scholarship guys can play minutes. Like I think this is one of the deeper teams in the. I think a lot of the teams in this conference are really deep this year, but I think Georgia Southern has 13 guys that I could realistically see playing big minutes.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, even the recruits they're bringing in are guys that you'd want on your roster immediately. And some of these teams in this conference probably would have them as starters almost immediately because they might need that scoring help. So, yeah, I don't have any qualms with what you're saying. I believe everything that you've said is very much potentially going to come true. And that's going to bode very well for Georgia Southern fans is, again, a 9-24 record. Probably, I don't necessarily say it flips, but it's probably going to be closer to flipping than looking like that again this season. So good news for the fans of Georgia Southern. Okay. South Alabama, also 8-10 in the conference, 16-16, right at 500 overall, and 11-6 home record. So pretty good there, just 5-9 away from home, though. What are we thinking as far as the Jaguars this upcoming season?
I think they're going to fall off a little bit. I think they're going to be one of the disappointing teams of the year. Looking at some of the guys they brought in doesn't really excite me too much. A lot of JUCO, NAIA transfers. In terms of who they brought back, Maxwell Land, but he's hurt, so I don't know when he's going to be healthy or anything. Judah Brown is a solid piece. But like I said, they brought in a lot of like NAIA Division III JUCO transfers, and it's a big step up in the Division I ranks, especially like a good physical conference like the Sun Belt. So, just on paper, I have them finishing towards the bottom of the conference, but heck, maybe those guys are ready to take the jump.
Yeah, I'd have to agree as far as like excitement level. A lot of these teams, like you said, are getting some guys that you expect to play right away. Like you just said with Georgia Southern, maybe as many as 13 deep. Definitely don't feel the same way here with South Alabama. And I just don't know if I saw enough out of last season, at the end of last season, to make me think that all of a sudden this team's going to really turn it around with a couple additions. And again, those additions aren't, unfortunately, the most exciting. I am kind of like you. I don't know exactly where you have them at, because you said towards the bottom of the conference. I've got them coming in last.
I have them in 13th.
Okay. So, yeah, we both have a fall off. This is almost comical to me that we didn't compare notes about where we had these teams, and we're coming up with a couple of them. ULM was a weird one for me, but a couple of them coming up in kind of those same spots. It's going to be interesting as we get closer to the top where we think some of these teams are. But, yeah, unfortunately, sounds like we may be in for a struggle there for Jags fans who were just in the conference championship just 2 seasons ago as they took on the Ragin' Cajuns down there in Pensacola. But we will see if we are correct in that or very wrong. Another Georgia school, as we know, Georgia State Panthers, 8-10 as well, 14-17, a losing record overall, 9-5 at home, decent mark, and just 5-11 away from home. And I don't know, I can't remember if I have this team making any real big moves. What about you on this one, Zach?
I have them finishing 8th, so middle of the pack like they were last year. They have some guys that really excite me. Zareek Nutter was a guy at Northern Illinois last year who averaged 15 a game, and from what I've heard, all off season has been really good. And he had like 23 in their exhibition yesterday or 2 days ago. So that bring back Tenari Lane too, I think is going to be a big help. He was a big time shooter, scorer, and I think he'll be up there with the leading scorer. I think he had 23 in the exhibition as well. And then there's one more guy, Caesar Edwards, guy from Missouri State. He'll be the starting center. He had a double in their exhibition. Those, from what I've heard, that's like the big three. Those three guys, and I think those three guys are really good. But the question is, like who else is going to help them out? Like who's that fourth guy? Who are some reliable guys off the bench that can help them? And I mean, just a lot of question marks.
Yeah, definitely. I've got two names, though, that may be fitting that mold in Malachi Brown from Seton Hall, who had a pretty good year last year, and Justin Archer from Radford. Radford's kind of been a dangerous team every once in a while. It's a team you'll hear, not necessarily a tournament team necessarily, but one that does pretty well in conference. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those guys –
I also throw in Nick McMullen from UNC Asheville last year. I think he had a good exhibition game as well. I think the four, if I remember right, they're like starting five from their exhibition was Malachi Brown, Tenari Lane, Zarik Nutter, Nick McMullen, and Caesar Edwards. I think that's a really good starting five. And like you said, Justin Archer, I think will be a decent piece off the bench. Jelani, I think his name's Jelani Hamilton. Yeah. Was a 4-star recruit at Iowa State. Didn't play, redshirted, didn't play. So I'll be interested to see what he could do. And then I think they have a few good freshmen like Dennis Scott or Trey Scott. And then Clash Peters, who was committed to Coastal and then decommitted after Benny Moss got fired. I think they have some intriguing pieces, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole roster, if I have this note correct, is almost split down the middle with returners and transfers, which is not like really
4
typical.
Returners. I think they only have like 4 returners. I think if I'm
only 4, okay,
3. I think Tenari Lane, DK Manuel, and Malik Ferguson.
Okay, wow, didn't realize it was that little. So yeah, that note is not correct that I had down. But I guess I looked a little bit at their beginning of their schedule slate. We haven't talked about that too much, but because I have the note in front of me, it looks like their first 6 or 7 games or so are kind of favorable. Like you said, if they can get these guys, that fourth guy to get in there and really contribute, this could be a dangerous team. You said you had them at 8th in the conference?
Yeah, 8th.
All right, I think I have them 10th. So jumping down a little bit, but not too crazy. Nothing huge there as far as the difference is concerned. We have the Golden Eagles of Southern Miss, 9-9 conference record, 16-16. They just like to keep it right down the middle there. But they did go 11-3 at home, a very impressive mark in front of their home crowd, which gets quite rowdy when they're playing well. But again, same thing that we've talked about, just 5-9 away from home. Is this team, they faced a lot of injuries to start last season, lost some guys for the whole season. Is this a team that just won the conference championship in the regular season 2 seasons ago? Could they return to that form this year?
I think so. I have them 4th in the conference. I think it's a team where, I mean, based on their 2 exhibition games, they just finished one and then they had one a few days ago. This team's going to be able to score with the best of them. Like, they're going to score a lot of points. My question is just how good is their defense? Because in their exhibition against New Orleans, they gave up 102 points. And then in their exhibition today against Jackson State, they gave up 85. So I think, like I said, I think they're going to have a plethora of scores, but it's just how much does that affect their winning, and can they get their defense figured out? Because if I think they can get their defense even like slightly figured out, this is a team that I think can make some noise even in the NCAA tournament if they get there.
Yeah, I think this team's going to be really good. I've got them jumping right back up towards the top, not at the top. I've got them in 2nd for myself as far as I was thinking there. I like Jay Ladner, their 5th-year head coach there. like what he's done. I think, again, the adversity with the early season injuries last year, Curbelo, I think he started the season, or maybe he was the one that got hurt before and then came in for, I think he only played like 2 or 3 games.
He came in towards the last half of the year.
Okay.
I think he faced some eligibility issues towards the beginning.
Was that what it was?
And then he played a few games, and I think he got hurt, and then he came back for a few games. But yeah, that's a guy who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. I saw him play when he was at Illinois. I saw him play in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament, I think, when it was all in Indianapolis. And that's a guy who they thought was going to be like their next guy. Like, he was backing up Ayo Dosunmu. He was the 6th man of the year in the Big Ten as a freshman, I think. And then he came in his sophomore year and just like was not the same guy. And he went to St. John's, and maybe it was a fresh start and he had a few good games, but he was just not the same guy. And he came here last year and he had some good games. And then in their exhibitions, like against New Orleans, he had 24 and 8 assists. And then today he had 29. So that's a guy who I think could really step up and maybe even be player of the year in the conference.
Dang it. You just spoiled my little tidbit there. That was my tidbit. That is who I have awarded the player of the year award to. That's funny that you just said
that. He just struggles with consistency. That was his problem in his second year at Illinois. And then at St. John's, and even last year, it was just like he's just so inconsistent. If he can get any type of consistency, he'll be dangerous.
Yeah, I like his, like, just from the eye test, like you said, the consistency needs to be better. But the way he plays the game, you can just tell he's a dangerous player when he touches the ball. You do not want to let him go off. And like you said, so far in this early part of it's not even the early part of the season. I guess it's the preseason, if you want to call it that. He's been playing very well. Denijay Harris, is it Denjay? Transfers back in from Arkansas, right?
Yep. Yeah. He was.
If I butchered it, let me know.
Yeah, I've always thought it was like Denijay Harris, but he was there for 3 years. Was really, really good for them, and then went to Arkansas. Barely played. Nice comeback. He had a really good 2 exhibitions, like another guy who I think he had like 30 and 15 against New Orleans, and then I'm looking at he had 25 and 13 today. So
wow,
yeah, he's gonna be a monster. I heard he lost some weight as well, maybe a little bit more athletic, and he's really improved his 3-pointer as well. He hit a last-second 3-pointer against New Orleans, sent it to overtime. So,
well, he was the one that did that. So I saw the clip on Twitter, but it wasn't clear who it was on the clip that I saw. Okay. Yeah, if a guy got lighter and faster at 6'7", 200 pounds, watch out, because that is a dangerous mix of size and speed. Yeah. And better shooter, yeah. What is I got a question mark there for them at the center position, or possible center position. They've got Lieb Yat, who got injured and didn't touch the court at all last year. He was thought about to be a very potential starter going into last season. I'm not sure if they're just going to go 2 forwards instead of the big center position, if he's maybe still not quite ready, either physically or skill wise. I don't know.
Well, I thought it was going to be Tegra Eze. He was a guy that played 15 minutes a game, 7 foot, like 250. Like, he's a big guy, but he didn't start in the first exhibition game. Didn't dress today. They've been playing 2 forwards, Denijay Harris and D'Anthony Gordon from Arkansas Little Rock, and then today they actually played 3 forwards. They also played Christian Watson, transfer from Miami.
Oh yes, I had him as also a senior. Kobe Montgomery. Both averaged over 20 minutes per game. So yeah, if you're playing a lot of healthy minutes for Miami and putting up stats, probably going to see plenty of the floor for Southern Miss this season. Okay, so you already touched on where you had them, right? 4th? Was that what you said?
4th, yep.
Okay, I'm going higher, going with 2nd. Overall, I think they're just going to return to form again. If they can get Curbelo to look at his old self and be a little bit more consistent, I think this is one of the most dangerous teams we're going to see in the Sun Belt this year. A team that has also been dangerous recently, the Ragin' Cajuns, 10-8 conference record, 19-14 overall. Again, a great mark at home at 11-3. But again, just a mirror image, 5-9 away from home. We've got Bobby Marlin returning again. We said 15th year at the school there. Know some struggles. There were some fans that were getting a little testy towards the end of the season there with how the Cajuns were doing and maybe what the expectations were. Obviously, they lose Kobe Julian, and we'll touch on that when we talk about Arkansas State here. But what are your thoughts on the Cajuns from Louisiana?
So originally I had this team as my sleeper pick in the conference. I thought they were really good, but then Hosanna Katenge, he tore his ACL, Achilles, and he's out for the year. So that kind of hurt it a little bit. I moved him down to 6th. I had him at like 4th. So I kind of flip-flopped them in Southern Miss. But I think there's a lot of exciting pieces. I think getting rid of Themis Folks, from what I've heard, both by fans and potentially in the locker room, he wasn't there towards the end of his Louisiana stint. Like, fans were not happy with him, and it went down a sour road. So, and I like some of the pieces they brought in. I think Christian Wright from Oregon State played a lot of minutes at Oregon State. I think he's going to be really good for them. I think Jeremiah Evans, he's a 4-star freshman who, now that Hosanna Katenge's out, I assume is going to be the starting center. And I actually have him picked as my preseason freshman of the year. So,
okay.
And then they bring in like Kendall Davis from Eastern Illinois, averaged 10 points a game. They brought in Mustafa. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but from JUCO.
Yeah, that one's tough.
And he can absolutely score it. And then bringing back a few pieces like Brandon Hardy and Mike Thomas. So yeah, I think this is a team that's potentially still a sleeper pick.
Yeah, I got a forward senior 6'6", 220 Zeke Cook from Jackson State too. I thought he was impressive as far as statistics. I can't lie to you and tell you I saw him play, but statistic wise, he stuck out to me as one they were bringing in that could contribute definitely right away. But yeah, you're right. The Katengue injury is devastating for the Cajuns, and you are exactly correct. I had them up towards the top as well until that happened. And you said that you had him in 6th, right?
Yeah, I moved him to 6th after that injury.
I have him at 7th because of that injury. So pretty even keel there. So yeah, it's too much of a question mark for me to say you're going to replace that guy's production and defensive prowess from last season. So a tough look for the Cajuns going into this season. But again, they do have some exciting pieces. So they could prove us wrong and be right up there in that top 3 or 4 without a doubt. All right. Now, the team that comes in with probably the most excitement for good reason, a team that went 11-7 in the conference, 20-17 overall, 10-3 at home, 5-11 away. But they went on quite a run to end last season. Ended up, like I said, I think the semifinals against High Point in the CBI tournament before they ultimately bowed out, making all the way to the conference semifinal game as well before losing a closer game to JMU than the final indicated, right? Actually, no, I'm sorry. They beat App State and they got to the final against JMU. That's right.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's right. So they made it to the conference championship, not the semifinal. That's my mistake there. So, Zach, take it away on what your thoughts are on the odds-on favorite to win this conference before it gets going.
Yeah, this is my pick to win the conference. I think, just they brought back a lot of big-time pieces, and then they filled in with a mix of amazing transfers and a few really, really, really good freshmen. And then I think this is another team. I think they're 15 deep. They have 2 walk-ons who were playing minutes in their exhibition, and Zane Butler and Cam Johnson. Zane Butler started as a walk-on over some of these really good pieces. So,
yeah,
I was gonna pick Kobe Julian as my my preseason player of the year as well. But they have Taron Todd. Taron Todd is really, really special. And I think that's going to kind of take away some stats from Kobe Julian. And Kobe Julian's going to take away some stats from Taron Todd as well. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, this team is absolutely loaded, and they're my pick to win the conference.
Yeah, early spoiler, they're my pick to win the conference as well. And to your point, I actually have both Kobe Julian and Taron Todd on my all Sun Belt first team.
Mm-hmm.
I think both of them are just that impressive. Again, is there 4 starters returning from last year's team? Is that?
So yeah, Todd, Ford, Dominguez, and Isaiah Nelson.
Yep. Isaiah Nelson. Yeah. And Avery Felts returns, right?
Yeah,
but
and
he may
Terrence
not have been
Ford,
a starter, I don't think.
No, he was like a 6-man. And Terrence Ford Jr.,
Gotcha.
who was 2 years ago, was a really good freshman. He was out for a lot of last year. He's back. They bring in Joseph Pinion from Arkansas, who was a highly rated recruit who played well in their exhibition. Josh Hill, freshman, really good freshman. He's their highest rated recruit in school history. Started in their exhibition because Isaiah Nelson couldn't play. Cody Head averaged like 9 points a game at Lipscomb, and I don't even know if he'll touch the floor this year. Like, that's how good and deep this team is.
Wow. Not to mention Brian Hodgkins going into his second year is a really impressive coach. I think a lot of these kids came in because of what he's able to do, right?
I don't think he'll be in Jonesboro much longer. If he has as good as his years, I think he will. Then I think a lot of Power 5 schools are going to be calling him up pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's probably likely as well. And we'll see how much of that roster. Although I guess let me look at the most of those guys are seniors that would probably be gone regardless of whether he moves or not. It looks like Darian Ford may have another year, and Isaiah Nelson possibly too.
Nelson's a junior. Ford is a junior. Both the Fords are juniors. After this year, I think Todd and Julian are done, and Felts. But other than that, I think they have a bunch of sophomores and juniors. But those are young team pieces right there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We've seen what success in this conference can do, as we've not quite made it to JMU yet, but you win, you're going to be gone. As we know that these teams and schools with a little bit more money than we've got to play with in the Sun Belt can afford to do with basketball. That's the downside to being one of the smaller mid-major conferences when it comes to basketball at this point.
Well, I think Arkansas State has some money, because if I'm not mistaken, I heard somewhere that the owner of the Tyson Foods, who's the reason why Calipari's at Arkansas, he's also invested a little bit into Arkansas State basketball. So I think they have some money to play with.
Okay. Interesting. That's not a bad thing. We'll take it. Again, if anybody's got some stuff to throw at one of our smaller sports that we need to pump up a little bit nationally, I'm all for it, because that's going to make everybody better in the end. A team that has continued to just win 20 games like it's something easy to do. Unfortunately, hasn't been at the very top of the conference, but again, routinely winning 20 games the past 3 seasons. Scott Cross, his team went 13-5 in conference, 20-12 overall, 15-2 at home. How about that array record? Gets them again, 5-9. A team that, record-wise, probably could have put into a postseason tournament. A little surprised they didn't quite get an invite, but they didn't necessarily have that hot streak to end the season like Arkansas State did. I think that's what swung in the favor of the Red Wolves over the Trojans in that regard. But all right, Zach, 20 wins again, or do you think they fall a little short?
I think so. I picked them to finish third. Like I said, I'm from Indiana, so I grew up around Purdue basketball, and they're just another one of those teams that no matter who's on their roster, they're going to find a way to win games. and I think Troy is that version of the Sun Belt Conference. I was kind of down on them like at first coming into this year, but like I said, that they return basically like almost everyone from a really good team. Yes. And they have good coach. They have great culture. Similar, like I said, similar to Purdue, where maybe the talent isn't there on paper, but they're going to find a way to win some games. So I think they'll be up there once again.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I actually have them in third as well. Yet again, it's like we're copying each other's homework over here. I promise that's not the case to all of your professors watching this, Zach. But Scott Cross has done an amazing job of keeping his team together. Like you said, we've talked about the 20-win seasons. It's literally a family-type atmosphere over there, which is brought into another aspect as he brings his son, Austin, into the fray as well onto the team this year. So it'll be interesting to see how much playing time he does get as the coach's son. But most of those coaches are pretty good about that. They're not giving their kids any favors just because they're on the roster. But Marcus Rigsby, Tayton Connerway, who was extremely impressive last year, both coming back there. Miles Rigsby, I mean, I guess that's another pair of twins that we have for
brothers.
Troy.
Brothers.
They're just brothers. Okay.
They have two sets of brothers on their team this year.
Is it Fields? Is that the other one?
No, Cooper and Kobe Campbell.
Campbell. Okay.
Yeah, one's a freshman, one's a JUCO transfer.
See, the family aspect continues. He does it again. But yeah, this team, I'm with you. I don't see how this team fails to win 20 games. Like they just, like you said, it doesn't matter who's on the roster. They're going to do it. And Scott Cross is well respected in his 6th year in Troy, Alabama. And I believe they are going to find their way right back up to the top like they have. And it's not going to be easy to get those 20 wins. Not saying that, but I believe they'll get there yet again. All right.
I have one more thing on them. I have Tayton Connerway as my preseason player of the year.
Okay.
I think he's gonna be big, and I mean, there's a little trend of players going from 6th man of the year to player of the year the next year, like Terrence Edwards, and I also have Scott Cross as my coach of the year because, like I said, I think they're just gonna find a way to win games and compete at the top, and then I think Connerway is going to compete for defensive player of the year because he's a really good defender, put up several steals a game, and he's going to guard the best perimeter player whoever they play. And there's a lot of good perimeter players in this conference.
Yeah, and was he the one that transferred in from Army originally?
No, I think Connerway was the JUCO transfer.
Was it JUCO transfer? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have him in my All Sun Belt first team, so I do definitely agree that he is a premier player in this conference. My coach of the year was Jay Ladner, just because if Southern Miss does what I expect them to maybe do, jumping back up, that's one that I'll go. We'll recap those things once we finish up too, so that everyone can get a good look at that. So JMU, yes, there's the trophy here, but they are not the last team we will cover. So don't go anywhere after this one's over. They finish 15-3 in the conference, an incredible 32-4 mark overall, 14-1 at home. And look at that. We finally got somebody who can figure out how to play on the road. 12-2 mark away from the friendly confines of Harrisonburg, Virginia. Do the Dukes repeat? Well, we know that, we both have Arkansas State as number 1. So I guess we've already spoiled that, but how far do the Dukes fall, I guess, is the more accurate question to ask you here, Zach.
I think they're going to finish second in the conference. I think Preston Spradlin is a great coach, did a great job at Morehead State, brought him to the tournament, and he's developed several NBA players out of Morehead State. And I think in terms of talent on paper, they're up there. They might be better than Arkansas State in terms of talent on paper, but I just kind of had Arkansas State a little bit ahead of them just because of continuity. And like I said, the fact that the same coach is there and they return almost all their big time pieces. And here at JMU, they only return Xavier Brown as like a contributing piece. But yeah, I think it's another exciting year for JMU.
Yeah. I won't even go over every single name we've got here, but just to listen to some of the transfers that they've brought in. One from Texas A&M, one from Syracuse, one from Georgia Tech, one from Seton Hall. So these are basketball programs. These are Washington. Yeah. Yep. These are basketball programs that you know and are familiar with from a team that finished in the second round with a loss to Duke, which is no shame in that, especially after that win over Wisconsin. They seem to have the Big Ten's number last year, I guess I should say, right? Was it Michigan State they started off the
opening night,
over, right?
Yep.
One of the biggest wins in the conference for sure. Their final KenPom was 63, by the way. So far and away the best one in the conference as far as that's concerned. And there's just no way you can go 32-4 again, right? Even with the talent, like you said, that's just an incredibly difficult mark to match. So I have them falling off and finishing fourth. Again, total crapshoot as far as whether that's going to happen or not. But you have them in second. I definitely think they are going to be up there challenging for the top spot in the conference once again, because like you said, that roster still has a ton of talent with a great head coach still at the helm, even though they had to replace another great head coach who ends up at Vanderbilt. Okay. So, yes, there's two trophy things here because I wanted to recognize both the conference tournament winner in James Madison, but also the regular season winner in App State, who took the crown over the Dukes of JMU. They finished with a conference record of 16-2, a 27-7 mark, a perfect 15-0 at home, and decent away from home with a 8-5 record. But they lost a ton off of their roster that they had assembled from last season. And Dustin Kearns is going to go into this season with a few unknowns. What is your thoughts on the App State Mountaineers, Zach?
I was kind of surprised that everyone left at the end of last year, coming off such a historic season for the program, and then the portal opens and everyone enters the portal, and almost none of them take a quote unquote step up in competition. Like Abson went to Georgia and Spillers went to Wake Forest, but looking at the other schools like Dallas Baptist, Murray State, Maine, Hampton, UNC Asheville, that really shocked me. So I thought there was maybe something going on behind the scenes. I know Dustin Kearns was potentially being looked at for some other head coaching jobs, but it kind of shocked me, and I think they're going to be in for a rough season, at least in terms of at least compared to their recent success. I think they're gonna be in for a tough season. Just a lot of unknowns and a new team. So we're going to see how these pieces fit together when they get on the court.
Yeah, and unfortunately for them, one of their guys that they lost to Wake Forest is also the team that knocked them out of the NIT in the very first round. So a little bit of a disappointing end, especially because those two schools are separated by all of an hour and a half at the most from door to door. So not great there. Dustin Kearns does enter his fifth season here, and like you said, I do think they struggle to replicate the success of last season with that massive roster turnover. Their final KenPom was 83. And again, I think that JMU one was, what did we say, 63 or 68?
68.
68. Okay. So App State, not terribly far behind, but it's interesting that they ended up on top of them in the regular conference, regular season championship, but only have a KenPom that's about 20 spots below where JMU ended up. And a lot of that is to do with the matchups and the win in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, Miles Tate and CJ Huntley seem to be the only guys that are coming back and going to be starters for this team, possibly. Again, a bunch of unknowns here. They got a Charlotte transfer in Jackson Treadgill, who I think will probably see the floor quite a bit. Pretty good shooter, 6'6", 200-pound guard. And then they've got a Jaleel Baybrun, I believe is how that's pronounced. Brobrun. Okay. 6'9", 240 transfer from Stephen F. Austin. The potential may be there, but like you said, to me, there's just way too many question marks to feel comfortable putting them right back at the top. And part of that thinking has to go along with what you said. Why did so many of these guys leave? Is it something about the coaching staff, or I don't know?
NIL,
I hate to say that. Right, NIL. You're right. Exactly. App State's not willing to pay a dime for basketball, and other schools are. I
like I
don't
said,
know.
it's just confusing. It's just confusing that all these guys left, and like only 2 of them took a step up in terms of competition. Like, so I think it was like what his name is. What was his name? Xavier Brown.
Yes.
He played 19 minutes a game last year, and he transferred to a D2 school. Like that, yeah, that kind of shocked me, and kind of makes me wonder, like, is there something else going on that the public does not know?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know that the rumor mill was going crazy when all that was going on, and yeah, he was probably the single most athletic guy on the court. He could jump out of the gym. I will say, he had a little bit of problem with taking care of the ball. He turned it over quite a bit, and not necessarily a great shooter. So the athleticism was there, but the skill level maybe is why he's finding himself at a smaller Division II school. Or wait, you said, was it Dallas Baptist? Is they're D1, right?
No, I don't think so. I think they're Division II.
Oh, okay. I know their baseball's D1, so that's why.
Yeah, I think their baseball is D1, but their basketball is D2. But I mean, it just shocked me. Play 19 minutes a game, and like a lot of guys are leaving. Like maybe you could be the next like 25, 30 minute a game guy. Like, why are you leaving to go to a smaller school?
It's a good point, and a point that we may never know. But so you said you have them falling off. I've obviously got them falling off with what I've said as well. But how far down do you have App State landing this year?
7th.
Okay. I'm not terribly far off. And I would have loved to have put them at 7th, but I just, again, way too many question marks. I feel like they have a big fall off here, and I've got them in 9th.
I kind of just gave them 7th just because, like, kind of trust Dustin Currents. And then I also bring Miles Tate and CJ Huntley are 2 really good pieces that are going to stick around, probably compete for all conference teams. So, I mean, they got that going for them at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm wearing the hat. I don't want to be right about them being in 9th, right? I want them to be better, just as Zach hopes that Coastal Carolina ends up way better than where he's predicted them to be. But got to try and split the difference here and not be too much of a homer and tell you guys what we really think is about to happen. So that'll wrap it up for the preview of the games, or the teams individually, I should say. So let's recap the awards that we thought we had. Player of the Year. Zach, why don't you go first with who you had listed there for that?
Tatum Connerway of Troy.
I had Andre Curbelo of Southern Miss. Coach of the Year, I had Jay Ladner for Southern Miss. Zach?
I had Scott Cross of Troy.
Makes sense. Newcomer of the Year, I think you mentioned this one. I did not mention this one myself. But I have – yeah, go ahead.
Mark Freeman of JMU.
Okay. That's a good pick. I've heard that name coming up a little bit. But I went with Austin Green from Texas State. I was really impressed with what he did statistically coming in, and I think he may be able to replicate that for the Bobcats down there in Texas. Defensive Player of the Year, Zach.
I considered Tatum Connerway of Troy, but I ended up going with Isaiah Nelson, Arkansas State.
Okay. That's a good solid pick. I'm going off the beaten path here because of what I think is possible about getting better at ODU. I am taking Colum Swanton Roger to come up big. He was didn't play a ton at Maryland last year, but he did get quite a bit of blocks when he was in there. So I'm thinking with his size, the coach that brought him in with him, like, some aspect of me thinks he's going to come through and take that spot, or very possibly can battle for the top of that spot. Did you have a full Sun Belt first team pulled out at all?
I had a first, second, and third team, but the third team only has 4 guys because I had Marcus Watson on there and he's no longer with the team. So,
gotcha. Well, we'll just do the first. I'll do my first team. How about that? And then you can do your first and second, or if you want to name your third that you'll have to fill a spot in for. So my all Sun Belt first team was Kobe Julian from Arkansas State, Anochili Killen from Marshall, Corbello from Southern Miss, as mentioned, possible player of the year, so that's why he's there. Tatum Connerway from Troy, and Taryn Todd from Arkansas State as well.
So my first team, Mark Freeman of JMU, Taryn Todd of Arkansas State, Miles Rigsby of Troy, Tatum Connerway of Troy, and then Kobe Julian of Arkansas State. Second team, I messed this one up too because I had Katenge in there. But Corbello of Southern Miss, Tenari Lane of Georgia State, Aaron Banks of Georgia Southern, Obina Anochili Killen of Marshall, and then I'll throw in Nate Martin as well, Marshall.
That's a good choice. Good choice there. And you want to go ahead and give us your third team? And again, gonna have to replace one, but at least those four
two
you
now
had.
because I kind of moved a guy up to the second team. But
that's true. Yep.
Miles Tate of App State, Sean Dewar-Gordon of Old Dominion, Isaiah Nelson of Arkansas State. I'll throw Zarik Nutter of Georgia State as well. And then I'll go CJ Huntley of App State.
Okay. Yeah, CJ Huntley could be in for a big year if he can kind of take some of that stuff that was lost by those two transfers you mentioned. It's possible he could be right up there. And he's got a pretty good shot for a big man too from the outside and perimeter. So we'll have to see. Is there anything in closing you want to share with the folks before we get out of here and look forward to next Monday's tip-off?
I'll go through some of the secret scrimmage and the exhibition scores or rumors that I heard.
Yeah.
A lot of these were tweeted out by Trilly Donovan on his Twitter. Whenever he gets like a verified score, he'll post it on his Twitter. So Arkansas State beat Murray State 78-73 in a secret scrimmage. They were led, I won't go to some of the specific stats, but they were led by Josh Hill and Taryn Todd. Okay. They also played exhibition against Trevecca Nazarene, and they won 78-71. They were led by Darian Ford and Taryn Todd. Coastal played Queens. Like I said earlier, they tied. I haven't got anything out of what happened in that game. Same thing with the two Georgia Southern games. But they played Sanford and won by 3, 88-80. And then I had one down. They played someone else just recently, the Trilly Donovan, but I don't remember who it was. Georgia State beat USC Buford 100-88. They were led by Zarik Nutter and Tenari Lane, as well as Caesar Edwards. JMU lost to Liberty 77-71.
Ooh.
They were led by Xavier Brown and Elijah Hutchins Everett, who everything I've heard is going to be an absolute force. And maybe we're going to miss out talking about him because from what I heard, he's going to be a monster. JMU played another one against Virginia Tech, and they won 93-76.
Wow.
They were led by Mark Freeman and Elijah Hutchins Everett. So another big game from him.
Yeah.
Marshall just played an exhibition yesterday. Like I said, Cade Gibbs was their leader, 19-10 for him. Old Dominion lost to American, 75-60. That was towards the beginning. So like I said, don't really know what happened there.
Right.
They also recently lost to Robert Morris, 94-79. They were led by Caesar and RJ Blakeney. Your Caleb Swatton Roger had a decent game, 5 points, 10 rebounds. So decent little first game for him.
Nice.
And then, Southern Miss, they had one, like I said, against New Orleans. Corbello finished with 24, 5, and 8, as well as 2 steals. Denijay Harris had 30 and 15. And Jet Montgomery, who's a freshman, had 10 off the bench in 9 minutes, which was interesting. And then Alfred Worrell had 20, a JUCO transfer. And then they just finished a game exhibition game against Jackson State, where Curbelo had 29 and 6 assists. Christian Watson, the transfer from Miami, had 15 and 8. And Denijay Harris had 25 and 13. So kind of a little bit of insight on some of the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, man. Thank you for bringing that score updates to us, because, again, it's not easy for the vast public to find these things easily. So
I'd also I'm kind of disappointed on the lack of exhibition games that are being televised this year. I feel like last year I watched 5 or 6 exhibition games before the season started, whether it was on YouTube or ESPN Plus or the school's channel. This year, there isn't a single exhibition game televised, which they're all either on radio or you just have to find the stats after the game, which
interesting.
Yeah. Kind of interesting. Kind of hurts a little bit, but there was South Alabama lost to an NAI school in an exhibition game last year or something like that. But it's kind of sucks not being able to watch them. And then you turn on and there's you see Purdue Creighton. I watch Purdue Creighton. It's why can't I be watching Southern Miss versus Jackson State as well?
Yeah, I know, right? I don't understand why they don't put that stuff. I mean, these kids are playing their hearts out, no matter whether people are all there in the stands or
that's
not.
That's what I would be doing. Right now, I'd be sitting here watching an exhibition game, but there's none on. I think
it's
the incentive also, they're trying to get people out to the game because a lot of these things are charity events. So they're trying to raise money for charity. So trying to sell some tickets.
That makes sense. Yeah, you definitely want that aspect of it. But this was a great first episode. Again, Zach's going to be a plethora of information as we go along the season. We haven't picked out a day of the week, and it may fluctuate throughout the season. Again, Zach's going to obviously be taking in as much live basketball when Coastal's right there in his backyard. And so we will see if we can find a mostly consistent date to bring this out to you guys. But certainly our hope is to bring this out to you weekly with some graphics along the way, provide some better Sunbelt basketball coverage than we have so far. Again, as Zach said, this is not always the best or the easiest to find out there on the interwebs. So you should be able to find this via video podcast on YouTube, Rumble, associated places like Facebook and Instagram as well. But also certainly on the audio form, if that's the way you like to take in your podcast. So, Zach, any final words before we wrap up our very first episode together here?
No, I mean, I think it'll be a fun season. I'm ready for the season start. Only a week left, but yeah, it's going to be exciting this year.
Oh, I know one thing. Tell them where to find you on Twitter.
Yeah, I think it's at Sunbelt Report on Twitter. And I also have an Instagram, but that's just mainly for communication purposes. So, yeah, Twitter, Sunbelt Report. I might be starting up some other stuff, but I'll let you guys know if I do anything else.
Absolutely. Please do. Again, follow at Sunbelt Report on Twitter. He's a great follow. A lot of basketball information coming your way. So until next time, we appreciate you guys all tuning in, and we'll see you next time.